Well, welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about the Avoider Saboteur in depth, and we'll start with a little overview. Before we get started, I want to just acknowledge that everything that I'm going to share to you in this PowerPoint today comes from Shirzad Chamine and his book, Positive Intelligence. Currently, I'm in the Positive Intelligence program, training to be a PQ certified coach. And for those of you that have gone through my pods, these classes are kind of the ongoing work that we do afterwards. So we have a few more people coming in. I'll just ask when people get in to turn off their video and audio so that we can go through our PowerPoint today. So today we're going to talk about how the saboteur develops, the characteristics, the thoughts, the feelings, the justification lies. And what I mean by justification lies is that's what the saboteur tells you so that you think it's important to keep around, the impact on self and others, and coaching yourself to shift. So you may have someone with an avoider saboteur in your life, or you may have an avoider saboteur yourself. Here's our little symbol for it. And let's go through. So let's start with how the avoider saboteur develops. So usually children who develop the avoider saboteur tend to be very naturally easygoing, flexible, and adaptable. They tend to naturally seek peace and harmony. They have a tendency to be positive and relatively non-judgmental of others. They're natural mediators, so they tend to easily be able to see all sides of the situation. And they don't really like conflict or negative situations or negative emotions. So they really enjoy that feeling of when everybody's happy together. And people with this saboteur tend to just have a natural joy when everyone's getting along, playing well together, enjoying each other's company. They just really, really love that feeling. And so what they learned when they were young is when things get unpleasant, when people start getting angry or mean to each other, they learn to cope by kind of escaping or running away or leaving or deflecting. That just became their go-to method of getting away from things that were unpleasant. And, you know, these all we tend to depend on our natural strengths, and we just, our strengths overdone tend to end up developing into our saboteur. So once we've kind of allowed that avoider tendency to become a saboteur, then what ends up happening is we develop some habits. And so people with the avoider saboteur tend to comfort themselves by escaping into soothing routines and habits. So maybe they tend to zone out, binge watch television, or eat, or other things, maybe play computer games, things that tend to kind of get them zoned out so that they don't have to deal with the chaos and the negativity of the world around them. They tend to avoid conflict. They have difficulty saying no. And because they have difficulty saying no, they tend to be very agreeable, but they find themselves often agreeing to things that they don't really want to do, which gets them into situations where half of what they do or half of what's on their plate are things that they never really wanted to take on in the first place. So they secretly resent them, and they end up procrastinating because the tasks are energy draining. They're not things that they really wanted to do in the first place. But because they can't stand conflict, in addition to not saying no, they tend not to push back very much. And when they resist others and they push back, they don't do it directly. They tend to use more passive aggressive techniques as opposed to direct pushback. A passive aggressive technique might be agreeing that they'll get something done and then not getting it done on the date that they say they would get it done. And then you have to be the one to follow up with them. And when you follow up with them, they offer some excuse like so-and-so didn't get back to them or something like that. And then they agree again that they'll get to it right away. And then the cycle continues. So it can be very frustrating, but at the same time, when you're inside the being of someone with the avoider saboteur, what they're doing is they're using it as a coping mechanism because they really, really hate the negativity of that direct conflict. Some of the thoughts that someone with an avoider saboteur might have is, this is just too unpleasant. Maybe if I just let it go, it will take care of itself. If I deal with this now, I'll hurt his or her feelings. I'd rather not. If I get into conflict with others, I might lose my connection with them. So I really don't want to ruin the relationship by creating a conflict here. The relationship matters more to me. So I'm going to bend and flex. I'd rather do that. That makes me a nicer person. And, we all have to make sacrifices when we're in relationships. I have my inner peace. I have my inner balance. I just don't really want to mess with it with, having conflict or difficult things come up today. And I'd rather give someone else their way than create a scene. Someone that I know who has an avoider saboteur calls it pacifying. I'd rather just pacify everybody else so that I can have some peace, right? So that peace is the main thing that they're striving for. In general, their feelings are even keel, but they tend to get really anxious as they think about the things that they've promised people or they've put on their to-do list and they're procrastinating on. They also have a huge fear about their peace of mind being interrupted. So they're kind of anxious about people coming at them with things, and they really don't want people to put them on the spot or to call them out on things. They really worry about that, and because there's a lot of drain related to that, they can be very resentful and have a lot of suppressed anger and resentment, but they don't really share that, and they may not even be aware of it themselves. So someone told me, one of my coach friends told me that someone with an avoider saboteur they won't tell you that they're angry, but they're the kind of person that sort of sticks out their foot and trips you subtly. So they'll do little things like, in offices, another thing might be they're the ones that just don't provide you with information unless you proactively and directly ask for that information. Or if they're in a management position, they may not make decisions because, they don't know what the right decision is, or, more than this, they're worried about all the possibilities that one decision might upset people. So if they make a decision, no matter what decision they make, they're in danger of upsetting someone or causing someone to be in conflict or to cause some negative feelings. And that puts them in a real bind. So as a boss, they often have a hard time making decisions. The justification lies, which means why they believe that this is a good strategy and they should keep it. They tell each other that they're a good person and it's good to spare other people's feelings and not hurt them. And that conflict is bad, and creating conflict is just creating extra drama. And it's good for them to keep the peace, and it's good for them to be flexible. And someone needs to be the peacemaker. So they sort of create this idea of what a good person is in their mind. And a good person is a kind person who's agreeable and flexible and doesn't hurt people's feelings and doesn't create conflict. And sometimes what happens, and I work with a lot of people who are in this category, what happens is they bury their own opinions so deeply because what matters so much is peace, and other people's opinions don't even matter, that when you put them on the spot and ask them their opinion, they will often freeze. They resent that people don't care about their opinion to some extent, but at the same time, if you ask them their opinion, they don't even know what to say because they don't even know what their opinion is, because it's never anything that they think about, because they're always thinking about what everybody else's perspective is so that they can mediate everybody else's wants, and putting their own wants into the mix just makes it that more complicated. So they tend to just bury their own wants and needs and opinions to the point where they even forget and they don't even know what their opinions or wants are. So that's something that I deal with a lot. And with my clients that have this as one of their saboteurs, a lot of our work together is helping them become aware of what they want. Even if they're not going to ask for it, just notice to themselves that they have an opinion. Takes some work sometimes. The impact on self and others. So denying the conflicts and negativities that do exist really prevent somebody from actually working with them and turning them into gifts. So if you're denying all the bad things, you don't have any challenges to turn into gifts, and you really don't have anything to grow on. Also, that happens in a relationship. And often of people with the avoider saboteur will confuse peace with numbness. So what they're really doing is they're numbing their emotions. They're not allowing themselves to feel something. So they're not actually getting a sense of peace. Peace would be a feeling of actual, like a little bit of joy or reverence. So it's a very calm feeling, but emotions do flow freely through you when you are at authentic peace. You may have sadness flow through you and it comes in and it leaves and you're at peace. You may have a moment of anger and it comes in and you feel it and then you have peace. But numbness is when just everything gets blocked down, everything gets compartmentalized and shut in a box. And so you're not feeling anything, but you're confusing it with peace. And so that ends up having a really negative impact because you don't develop the wisdom and power to harvest your pain, really, I said that wrong, but what I mean is you don't really learn how to process pain. You don't really learn how to get benefit from conflict, and you don't build resilience. What's avoided doesn't go away and fester, so it can be very draining and show up in other parts of your body in terms of pain and kind of chronic issues, stomach issues, that sort of thing. Your relationships tend not to be very deep. They tend to be more superficial because you're avoiding difficult conversations. And others don't trust you as much because they're not sure that they can count on you to tell them the truth. And people really value relationships where others will tell them the truth. But if you have a relationship with someone and you're afraid that if you had spinach in your teeth, they wouldn't tell you, or if you just did something without realizing it that hurt somebody else, but they don't tell you, you can't really rely on those people, and they aren't your closest friends. So if you have the avoider saboteur, how do you intercept that saboteur and grow? Well, one is to really celebrate the peacemaking strength. So a lot of people who have the avoider saboteur are really ashamed of and self-judgmental. They are frustrated with themselves for procrastinating and that sort of thing, but they don't see the underlying strength, which is that they're excellent at peacemaking. They're excellent at mediating usually. Learn the difference between numbness and using kind of your sage power to generate peace. Really feel your negative emotions. Now we talk about hot stove and only having your hand on a hot stove for a second, but we do want you to feel that hot stove for the second or two that it has something to teach you. So actually learn what your negative emotion is, learn to feel it, but then let it pass away and shift to sage. So you want to practice, I feel angry, shift to sage. I feel sad, shift to sage. See the gift of productive and gentle conflict leading to stronger and more secure relationships. So if you're actually able to have conversations about things, it actually brings you closer in your relationships and it creates more love and peace in your relationship. So that's a skill, and it's something that people with the avoider saboteur, as they develop, they really come into their own. And practice healthy ways to say no. And because people with the avoider saboteur do have that underlying ability to mediate and peacemake, they tend to be excellent leaders and excellent managers and excellent partners once they learn to have an opinion and share their opinion. Okay. One of the biggest things that people with the avoider saboteur deal with is procrastination. So a technique that Shirzad often recommends is to make a list of the things that you're procrastinating on. So you do that first. These are all the things I'm procrastinating on. You just make a list of it. You don't commit to doing any of it yet. And then you go into a PQ gym session and you do it for maybe 12 minutes, the real long ones. And then you go back and you look at your list and you say, what's the highest item on this list I'm willing to tackle now? So you may have it listed in order of top priority, and you just keep going down the list until there's something you're willing to tackle. And you do it in this self-love and self-acceptance. So you don't allow the judge to shame you. You don't allow your judge to guilt you about why you don't choose the top items. And you just do this really gentle, compassionate negotiation with yourself to get yourself to take one step. And then you do the same thing and you just keep doing PQ reps and having a gentle negotiation with yourself to take another step. And that's how you can get yourself going. And before you know it, you're accomplishing things. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the video for those of you that we have in class. We're now going to discuss. And for those of you who are on the recording, as usual, you can always reach out to me if you have questions. All right, bye-bye to those who are watching the video.